The coronavirus is still active in some parts of the country, some parts more than others. One that is more than others currently is Capitol Hill. Why? Because a bunch of Democrats fled from Texas, trying to escape having to vote, kind of do their job on a voting rights bill over in Texas. They said, we're going to pick up, hop on an airplane that's chartered for us with our pack of Miller Lite and go land in Washington, D.C., where there we're going to, I guess, meet with all of the other Democrats who are very excited about making a big deal about mostly nothing. So they did that, and unfortunately for everybody there, somebody had the coronavirus. And so they showed up sort of like a missile being launched out of Texas right over into D.C. Stephen Miller on Twitter posted saying something like, this was like 9/11. I mean, I can't believe the Democrats loaded up an airplane with infected Democrats and just launched them towards the Capitol building. Absolutely hysterical. But that's what happened. And now we're dealing with the fallout. So a scoop came over from Axios telling us that a White House official and a Pelosi aide, so two people, test positive for COVID. White House official and, you see there, a staff member from Nancy Pelosi have both confirmed and tested positive for the coronavirus. Why does this matter? Well, both individuals, they are vaccinated. We got some breakthrough cases. And they're mildly symptomatic. They illustrate how Americans who are inoculated against the virus can still get infected. We have a quote here from a White House official says, we know that there will be breakthrough cases, but as this instance shows, cases in vaccinated individuals are typically mild. And so I want to just pay special attention to that, okay? Watch how the goalposts change. We're sort of changing where the end zone is. And it goes from, well, get the vaccine so that you don't get the coronavirus to, well, you can get the vaccine, but you can still get the coronavirus. But now your symptoms will be less severe. So it's kind of different, right? It's a little bit of a change, but we got to be very careful with our language and continue to pay close attention to that. So driving the news, the Pelosi staffer helped usher a delegation of the Democratic Texas lawmakers. So you can see the chain here. You can see it went from one of the 6 lawmakers who flew in there into Washington, met with a Pelosi staffer, boom, that staffer got infected. Both the staffer and the White House official were on the same rooftop reception at the Hotel Eaton on Wednesday last week. White House official has not had any recent direct contact with President Biden, who is usually immune to the coronavirus threats because of his double and triple masks. Now, this was the image, of course, that we showed earlier, I think last week. This is the 6th Texas Democrat who tests positive for COVID, number 6. And this is the image that is sort of now made infamous around the world because of this 18-pack of Miller Lite over there with all of these, women. And I think this guy down here who wanted to go and travel over to D.C. So obviously the coronavirus is very serious, something that everybody should take seriously. And I'm not, thrilled to say that other people have it, right? It's not something that we should be, gleeful about because it is, of course, interesting, problematic, right? We don't want anybody catching the coronavirus. But the question here is, what are the Democrats doing? What is the response to this over from the White House? And this is, yet again, another one of these incidents of these breakthrough cases that we keep hearing so much about, right? All of the Texas Democrats allegedly were vaccinated, and 6 of them got the coronavirus. And so you're going to hear a very pertinent question coming once again from Fox's Ducey over towards Jenn Psaki today here at the White House press briefing. And she is saying specifically, she gives us an answer here because Ducey says, Jen, come on. You had like 10% of the Texas Democrats all test positive for COVID. So, what's the White House response to this? What are you guys going to be doing about this? Here's Jenn Psaki today in the press briefing room.
Thank you, Jen. More than 10% of the traveling party with these Texas Democrats now claim to have a breakthrough case. Is there any concern that this trip that was intended to advocate for voting rights is now a super spreader?
Hold on, let me turn the audio up just a bit.
Back in Washington.
Well, I would say that's not a characterization we're making from here. We certainly understand there will be breakthrough cases. Even vaccines that are incredibly effective are not foolproof. They're not 100% effective. We've seen that. Here's the good news, though. We know that these vaccines, that these individuals, I think, if I'm correct, have been vaccinated. It means that it protects from death. It protects from serious illness. It protects, for the most part, from hospitalization. So that is a good sign.
Now that COVID-19, after contact with those Democrats, has reached the White House, what is your message to these Texas Democrats?
Our message continues to be thanks for standing up for voting rights and the rights of Americans to have their voices heard at the voting booth, and we appreciate their efforts in that regard.
All right. So, we applaud them for fighting for voting ideals and America and all of that stuff. But you see how the goalposts move just a little bit, right? Originally, it was something like take the virus or take the vaccine so you don't get sick. But now Jenn Psaki just came out and said, well, you can get it and you can still get sick. But the benefit of it, of course, is that you are not going to be hospitalized. Oh, except in some cases, you actually can be hospitalized, according to her own statement. And so I found this very interesting graphic over there when I typed in moving the goalposts on Google. And this actually came up, right? The standard continually changes in front of our very eyes. It's not even anything that's surprising now. But now we can see here that the old standard was, of course, get the vaccine. Why? So you don't get the coronavirus. That was the big deal. Now it's get the vaccine so you don't get really sick if you catch the coronavirus, or more importantly, this could be when, right? If this is really going to be something that is sort of being talked about as a seasonal flu type of a thing. Not saying that it is the seasonal flu, of course, but the conversation being that every year we may see some flurries of the coronavirus. And so we're starting to see conversations about booster shots and about a third dose, and the list goes on and on. That sometimes these new variants may not be responsive to the vaccines. The vaccines may not protect against them. So, we're starting to see that the vaccine era doesn't really have an end date. It can kind of just keep going and going and going because the goalposts keep changing. And we'll see where it goes. But while we're doing that, we certainly want to look backwards. We want to take a peek back down memory lane and ask ourselves, where did this come from, right? We spent a lot of time talking about this. The Nicholas Wade article on my other channel, linked down in the description below, where I went through the entire article that Nicholas Wade wrote, brilliant article, and analyzing some of the different factors that one might analyze if they're trying to decipher where the virus came from. Did it come from a bat cave somewhere on the outskirts of China, or was this something that was engineered in the Wuhan Lab of Virology, right? It's a pretty important question. So Nicholas Wade came up with these different factors. And if you recall, we've talked about this here on the channel, but Nicholas Wade's article has one very, very interesting factor that it analyzes. And it says that essentially what you can do with these viruses is you can sort of cut them apart and sort of stitch them back together. And so on the show, the analogy that I used was Frankenstein, right? You've got the body of somebody else and the head of another person. You cut the head off and you attach it to the body, and you kind of get this weird thing. And you can see right here where the cut was, because it makes sense to cut in the neck, right? You attach the head right where you connect it to the body. And so the same concept was happening with viruses. You'd say we cut off, the body of the virus, cut off the head of this other virus, mash them together. Boom. This is our research that we're doing in Wuhan. And so we're going to sort of go down that road specifically here, because Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci, they were kind of battling over that concept about gain of function research and about whether or not labs and scientists were doing a deep dive to see if they can kind of make those Frankensteins, or take a virus that we already know a lot about and make it worse, make the functionality sort of gain function, make the effects of the virus more severe so that we could study it. And then, of course, develop vaccines and therapeutics to respond to these new viruses. The long-term plan speculating that these were going to come out anyways, and so we'll be ahead of the game by making sure that we're doing our research. So Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci get into it. Now, this is a very complicated conversation. We got Rand Paul, who's a doctor. We got Dr. Fauci, who's also a doctor, and they're talking about very complicated science and genomes and different, very scientific concepts that we're not going to spend time on here. But we don't need to, because Pundit over from Hot Air gave us a nice synthesis, and he gives us a headline. He says, Rand Paul to Fauci, you perjured yourself by claiming you didn't fund gain of function research in Wuhan there. And so we're going to go through this very briefly, but he says, I'd love to tell you who's right in this dispute, but the study that Rand Paul references is so highly technical that it reads like hieroglyphics to me. He says you combine that with a running dispute about what constitutes gain of function research, and it's hard for any layman to draw a conclusion. And so, of course, Pundit speculates that this is going to just divide people. If you're sort of pro-Fauci, you're going to stay pro-Fauci. If you're anti-Fauci and pro-Rand Paul, you're going to stay pro-Rand Paul. He also says that today what happened here is that Paul confronted Fauci with a simple question. In May, Fauci told the Senate that the NIH had never funded gain of research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which we know is BS. But the 2017 study, quote, discovery of a rich gene pool of bat SARS-related viruses, credits the NIH with funding. and describes something that sounds a lot like gain-of-function research. So the question is, of course, did Fauci perjure himself? And that is coming directly from Rand Paul. So we're going to get into this. It was about a 6-minute conversation that took place because I think Rand Paul only had 5 minutes in the Senate. We're not going to listen to the whole 5 minutes. I've got 2 clips for you. Before we get to them, I want to show you some of those hieroglyphics that Alla Pundit was talking about. And this is some of the same stuff that we covered in the Nicholas Wade article. And you notice it, right? It says a large number of SARS-related coronaviruses. This is from an abstract that came from that paper that Rand Paul was talking about. Look at it, right? We see SARS coronavirus, 5-year surveillance. We got full-length genomes of 11 newly covered strains. We've got SARS-CoV-S circulating and ORF3 and ORF8 and the N-terminal domain, and the list goes on, right? So that's not the point of this. Same here, another excerpt from another study talking about the confirmed use of the ACE2 as a receptor of the 2 novel coronaviruses. So what we're sort of talking about are what we see: RS4874, S gene, ACE2, SARS-CoV-2S, the list goes on. And so it's complicated stuff, but essentially where this is boiling down to, are labs mashing viruses together one way or the other? Are we taking viruses that either exist naturally or not? Are we creating our own viruses that maybe don't exist naturally and then seeing what we can do with those things? So think about, there are kind of 2 different ways that you can go about this gain-of-function research. One is you take a naturally occurring, multiple ways, but two sort of basic concepts here. One, you take a naturally occurring virus and you replicate it a bunch of times and you play around with it in a lab to see if it replicates and naturally evolves and gains some function that's going to evolve into a more severe virus. Right? So you do many millions of copies of that sort of to mirror natural evolution of a virus. That's one way to do it. The other way is you just start Frankensteining these viruses. You take the head off of that one, the arm off of that one, the legs off of that one, you smash them all together, and you create something that was very strong, and you try to insert that into an animal, or you try to see if you can perform gain of function onto that new virus that you just invented. And so we're all sort of mixing words here. And so you're going to hear this in this conversation, that they're sort of talking in circles because we're having a debate over words. What does gain of function mean, and what actually falls within that jurisdiction that would be something that would be categorized as gain of function? So after all that analysis, after going through the hieroglyphics, after reading those studies, after the 6-minute conversation that they have, Alla Pundit summarizes it for us. He says, my best guess at what all this means, as Paul says, is they spliced features of 2 different viruses together to make one that looked more like some of the new SARS viruses that they had found in bats in the wild. Okay, so they have these viruses that they know that are in nature, and they actually create something that is not in nature by splicing 2 different viruses together. Then, once they have that chimera, they tested that spliced chimera on the ACE2 receptors in the animals. So they take that mashed together virus, throw it into animals, and see if it will bind. Guess what? It did. So it actually worked. It went into the viruses, into the bats or whatever they were testing. This suggests then that viruses in the wild might be able to make the jump to humans without any help in a lab. That does sound like gain of function to me, but what do I know? Then again, it sounded like gain of function research to molecular biologist Richard E. Bright too. Right, this guy down here says Fauci brazenly lied the last time he confronted Paul, and Fauci brazenly lied again today. Right, so viruses could theoretically come out of the wild, or it's that they spliced the virus together and then inserted into an animal, which then theoretically could have made the jump. So once it is inserted back into the animal, then it jumped from the animal into the public, so that's a point right there. What if that jump was technically natural, but the splicing occurred before it went into the animal? So the virus that is injected into the animal is sort of, version 1.0. It gets modified throughout the testing process, and it naturally evolves. And so that second virus is now natural, but it's kind of really not. And so they're talking about this back and forth. Here is a 2-minute clip. So we're going to spend some time on this one because it was very, very spicy. It was a good one today. Here is Dr. Fauci. And folks, watch how angry he is. I mean, he's very mad. He's sort of at this point now where he's doing the points and he's doing the you're lying thing and he's doing the finger wag. He must have been over with Kamala at the White House because he's getting pretty good at it. Here is Dr. Fauci.
Now you're getting into something. If the point that you are making is that the grant that was funded as a sub-award from EcoHealth to Wuhan created SARS-CoV-2. That's where you are getting. Let me finish.
We don't know.
Well,
we don't
wait
know
a minute.
If it did come from the lab, but all the evidence is pointing that it came from the lab, and there will be responsibility for those who funded the lab, including yourself.
I totally
This committee will allow the witness to respond.
I totally resent the lie that you are now propagating, Senator, because if you look at the viruses that were used in the experiments, that were given in the annual reports, that were published in the literature, it is molecularly impossible.
No one's saying those viruses caused it.
No
one
is
is
molecularly.
that those viruses caused the pandemic. What we're alleging is that gain-of-function research was going on in that lab, and NIH funded it.
That is
you can't
not.
Get away from it. It meets your definition, and you are obfuscating the truth.
I'm not obfuscating the truth.
Senator
You are the
Paul's
one.
Time is expired, but I will allow the witness to.
Let me just finish. I
ahead.
want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, and that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists, those viruses are molecularly impossible
No one's
to
saying
result
they are. No
in
one's saying those viruses
SARS-CoV-2.
caused the pandemic.
Senator Paul,
We're saying they are gain-of-function viruses because they were
they're not.
animal viruses that became more transmissible in human, and you funded it.
And you
won't admit the truth.
And you
Senator
implying.
Paul, your time has expired, and I will allow witnesses who come before this committee to respond.
And you are implying that what we did was responsible for the deaths of individual. I totally resent that. And if anybody is lying here, Senator, it is you.
Oh! So Rand Paul just sips his water over there. Fauci, if anybody is lying, Senator, it is you. Rand Paul just, whatever, bro. Can you just admit it? So did you see what was happening here? Rand Paul is asking questions not about the coronavirus specifically. He's saying, listen, we're not talking about the coronavirus. Can you stop with it for 2 seconds? I know you're on CNN every day for 40 hours a day. Can you just leave it alone? My question is about gain-of-function research that was taking place in Wuhan that was funded by the NIH. And remember, in previous episodes here, we've covered the entire sort of chart, the slide that I made, covering the entire chain of events, going from Dr. Daszak through EcoHealth Alliance over to Dr. Batlady, Wuhan Lab of Virology. The whole chain worked its way all the way back to the NIH and the NIAID, all being run by Dr. Fauci. So it's pretty obvious at this point that there was some sort of investment taking place from U.S. Treasury over to China for something. We've covered the documents here on the channel, specifically showing you the transfers that were happening in terms of dollars and cents going from our country to another country. And now Dr. Fauci is, of course, sitting here saying, no, it had nothing to do with anything. And multiple people are confirming that he is less than honest on this particular topic. So let's see. Another question here. I think this is a different clip. I clipped these earlier. Let's see what we got here. Rand Paul again.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Turn your mic on. Come on, Doc. Turn it on.
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function.
Who? Dr. Daszak?
Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans.
Right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And
what?
Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I
Got
want
the
to
head
say
bob.
that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. Okay, you get one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition.
Do you see the head bob on that? Dr. Fauci, you don't know, or Dr. Paul, you don't know what you're talking about. Boom. I mean, he was on one today. Man, he's not happy with Rand Paul. But did you hear what the important part of that clip, of course, was that Rand Paul said to him, hey, so what you're telling me, Dr. Fauci, is that if you take a virus that you put into an animal and you try to make it more transmissible from the animal into a human, that's not gain of function? Dr. Fauci said that's correct, which is mincing words. Okay, we all know that's what it is because the virus gains a function. It can move from an animal into a human. And normally it was a virus that was only transmissible between animals. Now it can transmit from an animal to a human. There you go. It gained a function. It's not even that complicated. And I'm not a scientist. So Dr. Fauci, I think, is being a little bit disingenuous there. What do you think? Let's take a look at some questions coming in over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going to jump right into the questions that are coming in from the Watching the Watchers show question form. And we've got a few of them queued up. We got first in the house is Want to Know says, some doctors, maybe the CDC, are saying that after vaccination, it's easier to test positive. So you see that there from Want to Know. Maybe that's true, right? I don't know. I don't know about the tests, but that sort of might make sense because we're seeing several of these people who were vaccinated test positive. Next up, no name on this one. We've got breakthrough, right? And not a super spreader event, right? From what has been reported, the housing and the food bill and probably the beer tab is 1 million plus. Good to see you. No name on that one. Let's see. Want to Know is back here. It says, painting from Hunter. You're doing better than I thought. We have Speech Unleashed says, only my opinion. But them continuously lying about the vaccine leads to the hesitancy. Says they basically lied about how vaccines work and now it is catching up to them. They would have been better off telling the complete truth from the start. They just keep losing credibility. And because the goalposts keep changing. You know, it's always, they're sort of always responding to the latest, I think, political momentum one way or the other. And so they've got to just, I agree with you, Speech Unleashed. Don't even have anything to add to that. Thank you. Thunder7 says, hey, Rob, it was great to see Dr. Paul sock it to Fauci and remind everyone that Fauci lied on May 11th when he said the NIH didn't fund gain-of-function research, but a clear lie, all shown in the leaked emails. The bat lady got around $300,000 from U.S. taxpayers. Paul even mentioned there's a 5-year penalty for lying to the Senate. Will Fauci be arrested, Thunder7 says, and my prediction on that one is a hard no, right? There's absolutely no way that happens because he is almost like a demigod to certain segments of this country. We have D Nices here says, hey, Rob, great job on this segment. Why worry about COVID? We can trust Fauci. When will this lying, smug expert be held accountable? So again, I don't really think anything's ever, I think there will probably be virtually no repercussions for Fauci. And, you know, I think there's a good argument whether there should be, right? I mean, a lot of people say that you have to remember a huge part of this country listens to Fauci and they go, man, that guy is just so good, man. He's honest. He's brilliant. Wow. Man, he has a grasp on all of this. He's sort of above the fray. All of these politicians are just bickering amongst themselves. Dr. Fauci is sort of, man, he's saving our lives. A lot of people think that because that's what they've been indoctrinated with for the last 18 months. Peely Wheelie is here. Peely Wally is here, says, hey, Rob, isn't it crazy how Iraq was invaded because of the so-called weapons of mass destruction, but yet Fauci and his crew can play around with mutating dangerous viruses, which could be more dangerous if they get out? Who is the more troublesome, I wonder? Yeah, where were those weapons of mass destruction also? Weren't we supposed to find like big caches of that? Never happened. I was a kid back then. I think I was in high school, right? I would have been, high school or young college. And it was kind of a scam, the whole thing. And here we are, still over there. Sharon Quidney's here, says Fauci, oh, like that one, like all the Dems, is really practiced at deflecting and projected accusations, accusing someone of what you are doing. Personally, I don't believe a syllable that comes out of his mouth. How do you know when Fauci is lying? When his lips are moving. He makes me sick. That is from Sharon Quidney. Good to see you, Sharon. We have Joe Snow is in the house, says, what is the penalty for crimes against humanity? So, you know, it's a good question, Joe. I think that's kind of a broad category that encompasses a lot of different things. And I don't know what the answer is for some of those, right? What would the crime against humanity be? And who would penalize that? Probably the World Court or something like that, right? My jurisdiction is limited to there. But I think I understand your point in general. Good to see you, Joe. We've got Soul Viking is here, says, unlike other legislators, Rand Paul is a doctor and cannot be dismissed by Dr. Fauci like many of the others. That's from Soul Viking. And that's exactly right. That's what was so fun about this is that Dr. Fauci is up against Dr. Rand Paul. And, you know, I know who I'd prefer to do my my annual checkup. Let me just leave it at that. We have John Delar, 52, is here. It says, for God's sake, the coronavirus is an obvious bioweapon. Why does anyone talk about the timing of the virus and that it came out from China? Trump is biggest enemy. All this talk is BS. They don't want the truth to get out. We're going to do this virus dance forever. Well, it's kind of like that graphic that I played earlier in my earlier slide where you kind of put the carrot in front of the horse, and the horse, or the donkey will just keep walking indefinitely. We also have Kenny 1B says, as a PhD, I understand the need to have detail and the nuances on the topic, but something is clearly wrong with Fauci, right? And I'm with you, Kenny 1B, right? I really don't have much interest in spending a lot of time dissecting all of the different abstracts and the different studies, but I looked at a lot of the documents about the checks being cleared and sent over there, and, I think it's pretty obvious what happened, but we'll see what the evidence shows. Farmer's daughter says, Robert, the look on his face is the same one that Hunter Biden had on his face when confronted about the laptop. Big-eyed, for real. Yeah, did Hunter have the head bob too? I don't know where the laptop came from. I'm Hunter Biden. Oh, I don't know. That guy, that interview was so bad. All right, let's see what else. We got 363. We have Kareem165 says, the one thing Fauci got right is the name of the virus. It's technically SARS-CoV-2, not COVID-19. Well, thank you for that clarification. And we have another no-namer says, we know they are lying. They know they are lying. They know we know they are lying. We know they know. We know they are lying, but they are still lying. Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Doesn't Jordan Peterson talk about Solzhenitsyn? All right. Brilliant quote. I absolutely love that one. I'm glad that this is going to be saved. And our last question on the segment is from Farmer's Daughter, says, the best punishment for Fauci is to die in obscurity. So certainly we don't want him to die, right? We certainly don't want that anybody to die on this channel. We don't talk about violence here. But I think I understand your point there, Farmer's Daughter, that, sort of a ride off into the sunset. Okay. Thank you for your 15 minutes of trying to save the country. You did a terrible job. Thanks for your service. Have a nice day. We'll go on to the next fake doctor. The other thing that I always thought was very interesting here is why the Biden administration stuck with Fauci. I understand the need for continuity between administrations, but might have served them well to start off with a fresher face. Okay, so great questions. All those came over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and we got a lot of people in the chat over there. Let's give a quick shout out. Say hello to Jeremy, Soul Vikings over there, Farmer's Daughter, Joe Snow. You heard from them. We've got over on YouTube. Say hello to the chat over there. We've got Red Ford. We got Zorro, Christine, 16204 is in the house, J-Man, Curtis Bartle, and many others. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. And if you want to join up and join our community, it's at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. All right. Thanks so much for watching. Before you head out, I want to just remind you that I am a criminal defense lawyer here in Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and we've got a long history of helping good people facing criminal charges to find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and beyond that in their lives. Our phone number for a free case evaluation is 480-787-0394. You can also find us online at www.rrlawaz.com. We can help with any type of criminal charge in the state of Arizona. Things like DUI, drug offenses, misdemeanor offenses. And we can also help with clearing up old case records, like expunging cases or making sure that you can restore your rights so that you can vote again or possess a firearm again or apply for some other federal benefits. We can remove mugshots off the internet. Basically, anytime that you or somebody you know or love is in trouble with the law in the state of Arizona, we have an amazing team of people. We would just love the opportunity to help. And our phone number, of course, 480-787-0394. And if you don't need any legal services, that's a very good thing, but you may be interested in some informational offerings so that you are prepared if you do have to deal with the police. And of course, I want to invite you to head on over to gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. You'll notice here, I've got several different trainings that are available, including the law enforcement interaction training. This is the 1, 2, 3 rule for dealing with the police. It's one rule you need, 2 questions that the police can ask of you, and 3 responses if they ask you a problematic question. So that's available now. You can also get a load at my personal productivity system here called Existence Systems. Fun little course. And then we have here, if you're a lawyer or a legal professional, be sure to check out this program. We are meeting twice every month. Again, all of this over at gumroad.com/Robert Gruler. And if none of that sounds any good to you, well, just go ahead and give us a follow, because I'm working on some other products and some other offerings. And of course, if you have not already done so, want to invite you one more time to head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's where you can support the show, and it's where we can connect. We've got monthly Zoom meetings and a lot of other goodies coming up. So I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much for watching, and for all of your love and support. I will see you on the next one.